All right, welcome to the Heare Brotherhood podcast. We are stoked to have Josh Prows with us today, a name that is familiar to many from all the times that we have tagged him relentlessly on all of our posts, because Josh is a very talented photographer, videographer, and has been with us from the very beginning, it feels like. Tell us real quick,
because I really remember a time that you weren't part of it.
Yeah, how did you find out about the Brotherhood and then be like, hey, raise your hand and say, I'd love to shoot some stuff?
Yeah, so, well, first off, thanks for having me on. I feel very honored. This will be my first podcast, so ripping the Band-Aid off. Yeah, so I don't know the exact timeline, but I'm sure it was right around last May. It was around the first launch of the apparel. It was maybe a week before that happened. I, like a lot of people, saw one of Justin Bray's posts, and I was just like, there is some real authenticity to this post. This is real stuff. And I think it stood out to me in the LinkedIn world, which I was kind of new to. I honestly, I made one in LinkedIn in college, didn't do anything with it, had 12 followers.
Like the rest of us.
Yeah. And then when I got fired from a job that I was at for a long time, out of the blue, I was like, oh crap, I got to do this. So I was on LinkedIn more than usual, saw that. And then, I started following him and then saw his Heare announcement of hey, we're doing this apparel. And that led me to just looking to more what was going on. And when I went to the site and I read the oath, I was like, yes, I can get behind this. I can put my name to this. Having been someone who went through a divorce and knowing how rough that was and just, a bunch of life experiences, I was very passionate about men need more support. And so I was like, this is definitely in line with that. And, if I can buy a hoodie to support that, sounds good. And cool. So I bought my tan hoodie, which, I wear all the time. It's one of my favorite hoodies. And
I feel like you are the resident tan hoodie wearer.
Well, it's the only hoodie I got. So. But that was kind of the start. And then I think too, because I was in this transition of trying to, I got fired, trying to figure out job stuff. And then I decided to try and start my own business doing photography and videography. And so my availability was pretty good. And I was obviously passionate about what you guys were starting. So when there was I think the first time I came and shot with you guys was the Bells Canyon cold plunge. Yeah, I just was like, you know what? It was a Saturday. I didn't have anything going on. My girlfriend, who's now my wife at the time, she was out of town. And so I was like, yeah, I'm going to go do this cold plunge. I'll just see what I can do as far as getting some more lifestyle content. I will say this. There was a little bit of maybe selfishness. So I was like, this would be a great opportunity to build my portfolio and get some more lifestyle content. And it just happens to be something that I'm passionate about, what you guys, the messaging and all that stuff. So yeah, I shot the Bells Canyon with you guys, and
on our end, we're so grateful that somebody wanted to come and take some pictures, but we just had no idea how good you were. So we go on the hike, and then literally 5 hours later, you sent us this collection of photos, edited, and a video, I think.
Yeah.
All at the same time, I was peeing my pants. I was so excited. This is exactly the style that we want. This is exactly, and he's fast. So anyway, that was, it just was love at first sight from that moment on of this is the style I want.
Not to set an unrealistic expectation for Josh's future clients.
No, it was a perfect storm. Like I said, my girlfriend at the time was out of town. I might as well just
bust it out.
While this is on my mind, I'm just going to bust this out. Yeah, shoot it, get the photos out to you guys. And then I was like, I told you I'd probably have the video done later that day. So I sent the video on later. And
that was awesome.
And it was cool though, but it was cool to be with the brothers on that event. It was cool to kind of get to know you guys. And I know you guys don't think you're a big deal, but even at that first event, seeing Justin, seeing John, seeing Mike, it was and actually getting to talk to you guys. I don't think you guys realize that brothers do idolize you guys as the people, not only that start this, but as people to, I don't know, I guess idolize, like I said.
They do until they meet us, and then they're like, oh,
these are just some regular guys.
Yeah, but I think that adds to it. So, I mean, that was cool for me just to like
nice
get to meet you guys, get to connect, and then, just make myself available to further the message a little bit and, take off something that I think is needed in the world. So.
Dude, I love that. And I don't think there's anything selfish about like going to do a project like that is for your benefit, but it's also something that you care about and that you're passionate about. To me, I just see that as like a mutually beneficial thing. And wouldn't it be great if all work was like that, right? Like we get to work on stuff we care about, and it's good for us and it's good for the people that we're helping and serving, right?
Yeah.
But so tell us a little bit about you are a photographer, you're a videographer. Just a little more context around like maybe how you got into that and how that's been for you.
Yeah. So it's actually one of those things where it's like I kind of stumbled into it a little bit. Okay. So the somewhat succinct story of it is I actually got my degree in web design. And, I thought the internet's not going away. It'll be a great investment. Right. And so I got my degree, and during that time frame, like me and my buddies, we've always done stupid stuff together, like riding dirt bikes, pulling each other behind three-wheelers with on a rolly chair, kind of stuff like that. Like that's just like our junior high school, even in after high school, that was like our lives. So
it was like X Games in your backyard.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there was a lot of stuff we look back and we're like, how did we not get more injured? Yeah. But bought a couple GoPros, we all rode dirt bikes together and stuff. So we'd throw the GoPros on and we'd go on these trail rides and stuff. And then I'd get home and add a bunch of music to these ridiculously long GoPro videos and make what I call, quote unquote, sweet edits. And they're actually still on my YouTube. You can go back and look at them. But that's kind of what started it. I just taught myself how to edit. And it was just something I did for fun. And then when I graduated college with my degree in web design, I was just looking for jobs, and there's a company here in Utah called Rocky Mountain ATVMC, and they sell parts for dirt bikes and side-by-sides and ATVs and all that stuff. And one day I was working at FedEx at the time, and I got done with my deliveries or whatever I was doing, and I just decided I just kind of dawned on me of like, maybe they needed a graphic designer or a web designer. Like they've got a website, and it'd be cool to work in this industry that I love participating in. And they had a video editor job on there, and like my eyes just like lit up. Like that would be so cool. Like I didn't feel qualified in the slightest, because like I'm just like, this Joe Blow that just self-taught whatever GoPro footage. I didn't know much about cameras besides hit the record button, go do stuff, come back, add music. I had a couple people in my circle that were just like, yeah, like give it a shot. Like, the worst they can say is no. And I ended up getting the job, surprisingly, and that was in 2015. And I was with them for about 8 years. And then, so I was primarily a videographer for them. Yeah. I did, helped take off their YouTube channel and all that stuff. I think when I started, we had like 20,000 subscribers. And when I left, there was like 400 plus. So
dang,
it was pretty cool. I gotta be like the main camera guy for a lot of really cool projects. One of their most viral series, it was called 5 Miles of Hell. Or there's a $500 motorcycle challenge through 5 miles of hell. I got to document the whole thing, and it ended up being like the most viral series for them. And it was really cool. And there's the times I even got to be in front of the camera. So I didn't love that part, but I was like willing to do it. I feel like I was like, I've got the knowledge, I can do it, even though I feel like I'm better behind the camera. So
cool. And now here you are in front of the camera again.
Yeah, it never seems to be able to escape. So, but as much as I try and fly incognito, it happens. So.
Dude, that's awesome. And then I know you've had you touched on already a couple of aspects of your personal life that have drawn you to, I guess the mission, right, of the Heare Brotherhood. And you mentioned going through a divorce, and then at the time we met you were dating, and you've since gotten married.
Yep.
And so I know a whole story to that, and we don't have to go super deep into that. But if there's anything that you feel like you want to touch on with that journey that maybe helped you along your way, and maybe that is the reason why some of this movement has been resonating with you, I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is honestly, like, I was doing a lot of personal development work between like 2015 and 2020. And I realized through that work that the more I kind of got myself out of my own way and like kind of just like broke down these walls and these decisions I'd made about myself or about other people, and like started tearing away these filters that we, naturally place in life to try and protect ourselves, the more I realized that I wanted to contribute to people and like that I just wanted to help. I think that's a pretty natural thing. I feel like because I was someone who was pretty judgmental. I was really kind of quiet and, just kept to myself mostly, but internally, like I was very critical of people. And I just started kind of seeing that, I don't know, fall away and feeling like I just wanted to, like I had something to contribute to people. And so I think that's what kind of started it. And then obviously going through like hard challenges myself, through a lot of those challenges, fortunately, I had like really good people in my corners. I had coaches and stuff like that that kind of helped me see the light at the end of the tunnel. But I realized that not everyone has that. Like so many people are living with these ideas about themselves or these limiting beliefs, as we'll probably get into and stuff, like limiting beliefs and decisions that we make about ourselves without knowing that they are like running the show, and that they can give us some strong suits in life, but they also have, the double-edged sword of like these hardships that, these things in life that just keep happening. We don't know why. Like I was the byproduct of that, like these, especially with the relationships. I didn't know why it kept happening the same way it happened. And then all of a sudden, doing some personal development work, like I realized these decisions I made in high school, like in heartbreak or, in fear and stuff like that, that were just like running the show. And once I was able to discover those, like I was just freed up.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to help people be freed up in life, because as cliche as it sounds, it's too short to just like be wound up in all of our insecurities and decisions and all that stuff. So,
dude, I love that. And I love that Josh just came to help us out with like shooting stuff and videography. And then I would just have these little side conversations with Josh and be like, who is this guy? Like, like he's wise beyond his years. I think you have a perspective into even what you are documenting, where you're seeing people, in some really vulnerable moments. And I think that like you have a deep level of maybe understanding or even empathy. To me, it just enables you to capture these really powerful moments, even in a more personal way. The soul comes through in the work. And I think it's because you've done a lot of this work and you're continuing to do your work. But to me, it's so cool that the way that you engage with the community, it's not just sort of I just shoot some stuff and I check out. That's like you're a part of it and you're in it and you're doing the work and you're connecting with brothers and you're sharing things and I love how inquisitive you are. You're always like asking these deep questions. I just got a quick anecdote. Like we drove for how many hours in the car to and from Arizona? It was probably like
20 hours,
9-10 hours each way. Yeah. So like 20 hours together. And it was the way down. It was you and Doug and Nikki and me. And so, I mean, just crazy, like
deep conversation.
It was pretty wild.
Yeah.
So there wasn't like a moment of silence in
we talked the whole time.
Yeah. It was crazy.
We had plenty to talk about both ways. And I mean, Josh was right there, like asking the questions and sharing insights. And it was just so cool. And then on the way back, it was the same group, but Doug rode back with Josh. I mean, it's like hysterical now to think back on our conversation because, I mean, we were talking about like existence itself. Like, I mean, we got down to like pure existence and agency and like the universe. I mean, it was the multiverse, the fourth dimension. I mean, we were going
deep. Like, where does authenticity stem from, and is that pure self, and like does that change over time? Does what feels authentic to you change over time? And then it got into these fourth dimension stuff, and
that was my fault.
I wish
sorry.
I could have just been a fly on the wall for that whole conversation. Three philosophers from very different.
And it was after like a very spiritually, emotionally, physically draining weekend. And we're like driving back. And we're all just like totally smoked, like mentally.
We were on fumes at that point.
And we acknowledged it many times, and that just added to like the humor of the whole situation. But that was cool.
It was amazing.
Okay, say, that conversation sounds somewhat exhausting after.
At one point we did have to try and like just like okay. Like Nikki was like, I'm done. I need to take a nap. Like he's like, yeah. And so we did try and change gears a little bit and go a little more simple, but it was very entertaining. And it was, like you said, very inquisitive the whole time, which was
very thought provoking.
Really cool. There was no final, like, this is it,
Yeah.
It was just like it was all
speculation
wonder.
and curiosity, which was cool. Yeah.
It's fun. So you've been to now 3 retreats, I believe, right? Because you went to Zion.
Oh, Zion
in November.
Was the first one.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you shot that, and there's so many famous photos from that within my life. Within our
famous in our circle.
Yeah.
Or in mine.
That are just so personal and so beautiful to us, just as keepsakes and memories, but also hopefully to the community. But just because it was such a beautiful experience, and so forever grateful for that. Then you had the opportunity to go to a retreat at Mike's.
In Midway.
In Midway.
Yep. Without having to document anything.
We told you you're not allowed to bring your camera. You have to come experience it firsthand. Because that's what you've always done. You've always shut up with your camera, breath work, retreats, all the things, cold plunge. And we thought we want him to experience it without that. So, okay, so then fast forward to Arizona last month.
Yeah, it was just a couple weeks.
It was a couple weeks ago.
It
feels like it was forever
a few weeks ago.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So we ended up going to Pace in Arizona. We went to it was called Mountain Meadows Bible Camp, Mountain Meadows Ranch.
Yeah.
And it was it was the picture perfect camp, summer camp style.
Yeah, like youth camp style.
Youth camp style.
Bunk beds and little cabins.
Yeah. Yes.
Yep.
Tall pines.
Pines.
It wasn't like barren desert Arizona. It was like up in the mountains.
Yes. Beautiful.
Not what you would expect when you think of Arizona, but it was
So one of the things that I thought would be really cool is you have such a unique perspective, and Mike was talking a little bit about it. You've experienced it firsthand, but you've also at 2 retreats had this kind of bird's eye view that Mike and I don't get, that the participants don't get. And so I think that's such an interesting, you're seeing it every once in a while. We'll see you like yonder behind the trees getting a really cool shot. And
kind
just
of floating around the circles.
You come in and out, and so you're
very
kind
discreet.
Very discreet. We wanted to talk through some of the things with you and get kind of your unique perspective that you're seeing as a partial participant, as a videographer taking a step back, and as a part of the team, because you are very much a part of the team. You come to everything these days. I would just love to kind of break down some of the most impactful moments that you saw, that Mike, that you saw, that I saw, just talking about some of the things that we saw that caused some transformation.
Well, I love the way you set it up, which is like Josh comes to these with a different perspective than the rest of us. And I'd love to just keep that sort of an open-ended question. What's that like?
Yeah.
What's it like for you? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, first off, too, thank you for the acknowledgement earlier, and from both you. And I do try and be a ghost in these events. So it is a little bit interesting because like I usually, especially this Payson one, like I went in like business in mind, right? Like we did the Zion one, and we got some great photos. The video on my side, being a little bit high standards of myself, I was like, okay, I learned a lot.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's stuff that's missing. So how can I take what I learned from that, make this one better? And so like I was full business mode, just trying to think through like, how do I accomplish this? How do I make this feel as real and authentic as possible? Like that's usually my MO. And that's, I think, what you were speaking to earlier is like, I resonate most with just like real authentic content, like capturing things as they happen, not trying to fabricate, but as much as we can just get to like the raw, like why, it's just so much easier for everyone. And especially for me. And like, I feel like I do have a knack for kind of recognizing it.
Yeah.
And
very good at that.
And so that's kind of what I go for, is like, I'm just like, okay, how can I make it seem like the viewer of this video is along with us, and they are getting not only a sense of what it's like to be there, but also like can maybe even like start seeing where they have areas of life that they can transform as well, or they can hear themselves in another person's story or share or something like that. That was kind of the way I came into Arizona, I feel like. And I do appreciate you, Mike, because you kept like pulling. There would be, I'd be kind of doing business and stuff, and then you'd be like, "No, I want you in on this one." Like, so I get pulled in as I'd get pulled in as a participant and stuff. So it was kind of a balancing act there of like, when can I like just discreetly detach, if there's something that needs to be captured, and then also come in and participate. But yeah, I mean that's kind of my perspective coming in, and then it always ends up way different than how I think it's gonna go. Especially with the level of participation. Like, I was joking with some of the guys, at least at Arizona, is like, you can only take so many pictures and videos of a bunch of guys in a circle. And so it was really cool to like, okay, like there's some cool opportunities here, especially, later in the evenings or in the mornings when the light looks really cool, and then we can capture this camp and kind of the essence of it all. And then come in, sit in, do the work with the guys so I can, be a part of what's transforming and what's being done, and then, get some breakthroughs myself. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's definitely that's definitely kind of the way I approach it. And I have no idea what's going to happen. I have resistance usually going into these, where it's just like, I felt like with most things like breath work or these retreats, it's kind of like going to the gym, where
like, I'm about to go through something hard, but I know I have to.
Right. Like I don't feel like I want to, like, I don't feel like I want to do this. And like I have resistance, but then afterwards I'm like, so glad I did it.
Yeah.
But
so I feel about cold plunges every time.
Oh yeah. Same. I dread 100%. Cold plunges.
I hate it. Oh, I loved that.
Totally. So I wanted to touch on something that, the type of content that you normally have shot professionally versus what happens at the retreats. And I know there's been some interesting insights around that. And it's a little complicated. It's a little delicate, right? Even for us as the facilitators, there are things that happen in those retreats that are very confidential and very special and even sacred. And so it's not the kind of thing where we want to just like plaster that everywhere, right? Like we kind of have to approach it with care. And I remember you having a very similar perspective on it. And I really was grateful and appreciated your perspective on the things that we captured and just how you treated them as sacred as well.
I mean, looking back, like, what is it about the intensity, or like, what is it about these retreats that brings so much intensity and rawness to? And like, I think there's a lot of it is intention, right? Like everyone there is going because they want to become better men, and they want to break through things that they are limiting for them and stuff like that. And I think when you've got that intensified group and intention, it definitely like amplifies what's going to happen. And and there's no judgment, there's no egos involved. At least, maybe after the first day you get a little bit of it, but then like
break it down.
It dissolves really
real
quickly.
Fast.
And you'll never see more men giving each other hugs than you do at these retreats, just because it's so powerful and there's just such a strong connection for everyone being up to something. And there is certain things that when I've shot, like, I mean, I'll be honest, this is some of the most powerful stuff that I've ever shot with my camera. You talked about before, like I was very much in the action sports world, and I still somewhat am.
Yeah.
And I think there is a rawness to that world as well that is maybe helped kind of see, because there's certain things that you're just like looking for, like, okay, how do I make this look cool or real, or like, and like give it the justice it deserves kind of thing. And so I think, I go into those, like when I see stuff happening, there is like, okay, this is powerful, and this has like an energy to it that, if I can capture it in a way, or like I want to capture it in a way that showcases that basically. And then there are moments like you're talking about where, whether the context is missing of like what's actually happening, like, there's something powerful happening, but like just like photos and video just won't do it justice. I think there's, anyone who has a smartphone, and has taken a picture of like a giant moon cresting over the mountains, or some crazy sunset or something, right? Like
or the solar eclipse, or the
or the solar
fireworks.
eclipse. Like nothing, like as hard as we try, as creators, we try to make it look as cool or just powerful as it is with our cameras. Like there's just something you just can't quite capture as far as being there. And so I think it's just being conscious of that, of like, this is a powerful moment but it's better left just being a powerful moment in this space and not needing to like broadcast to the world that it happened.
Right.
It has more power just like for the individuals that were participating in it than it does to like showcase like, hey, we did this.
Right.
And so I think that's kind of, I don't know, that's what I've realized. But at the same time, sometimes it's cool to capture for that individual, right? So they can remember, especially in these circumstances. I was reflecting back with you, Mike, a little bit of that, like maybe I could have taken a little bit more in those moments just so the men that were there could recap and be like, oh yeah, like that was powerful, and like honor those moments and like, and have them stay fresh in their minds and
kind of just as a history, as a resource for them.
We came back from any event really, but like the retreats especially, we'd come back from those and then we'd get your photos and relive the whole thing. You know, it just brought it back so powerfully. And I saw people in the app commenting in a similar way of saying like, I've looked through these photos like 10 times or whatever, you know, and it just brings you back to that because it is such a set apart experience, and you come back and it's sort of disorienting, and then you get back into the daily grind and you get back into life and the demands, and it's easy to go like, did I really even experience that? Like, did that even really happen? And
or you might try and invalidate it. Like that was just, you know, that was just something that happened. That's a standalone thing, that it was maybe because of the environment that it's so intense for me, but you know, they'll try and like, I don't know what the word is, maybe like
invalidates
invalidate that like that you had that transformation because life starts happening, or you have a breakdown in communication with your wife or your kids and you're like, nope, I'm still this old person. They start invalidating this transformation that they had, or this breakthrough that they had. And so if you can bring that back to like, no, like this is real, and you get to choose to embrace that transformation or that breakthrough, you know, hopefully that's, you know, what I can help provide with, you know, the content or the media. Absolutely. Is like realizing that, no, this is real, and it's going to be a choice for you to like continually have this in your daily life and like honor what you discovered about yourself or others and stuff like that.
Oh, I love that. We were talking about how do we keep the spirit of that retreat going? How do we keep the progress going? How do we keep it top of mind? And I think there are a lot of different ways that we've attempted to do that. And even just why do we journal there to unpack and explore things, but we also journal for future us, you know, to go back and look at and read from us in that heightened state, a bunch of powerful things, a bunch of truths. And so like the journal is one of the ways, the photographs, the video is one of the ways, the community that stays connected on the app is another way. I'm even wearing this little bracelet. You guys all got yours.
Power Rangers unite.
So, you know, there's a little reminder of like, and I look at there's these little lava bead things, and I'm like, dude, we stood in these circles just like these little lava beads forged from the fire, you know.
Yeah, for those that are listening, they're lava bead bracelets basically.
Yeah,
but little black lava rocks, and the idea behind them was, it was part of our like closing circle, slightly ceremonial, where we handed each guy, as they shared some thoughts, this bracelet. The idea is that they've been forged through the fire. That's part of our mission statement, is to forge a global brotherhood. And so we wanted to bring that in, and we were around a fire, so it added to it that they got this reminder of the work that they had done, the forging that had happened.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the forging that happened.
Well, I actually had a question that will go perfectly with this, and it goes with something you said, Josh, which is, as you're thinking about what shots you want to get on these retreats, you talked about trying to do it in a way that the viewer, eventually, whoever's watching, they're right there with you. And so my mind went to this question of what event from this Arizona retreat do you wish that every man on the planet could be a part of? What sticks out to you the most about where you would like guys to be alongside you, witnessing the whole thing?
There's a couple images that come to mind as far as like what I actually captured.
Yeah.
There's a couple moments. I think when, I don't know if it was maybe the second day, we started like looking in towards, I think you kind of prefaced it the first day, but we started looking towards like this inner child, you know, idea, which I don't think is new for anyone that's, you know, done meditation, stuff like that. but it was very powerful for me to just kind of like have this conversation. Like I've been aware of, like treat your inner child nicely, right? Or like, how would you talk to your inner child the same way that you talk to yourself in the mirror, kind of thing. But I think having this kind of more in-depth, like, what is our life about? And like having that kind of conversation with your inner child was really cool for me. And it was something that was very new and very raw as far as like, again, like not dishonoring who I am and like who I want to become, and maybe the dreams and things that I've like given up on throughout just years of, breakdowns and heartbreaks and all that kind of stuff. So that personally as a participant was really powerful. And as far as from the outside, there was a couple images for sure, like when we were doing the transformation lab, like there's one with Kiyoki where he's in the middle and like everyone in the circle's got like a hand on him. And it was just like, and he's going through the gauntlet. He's like, he was really like going through stuff from his past that I think had haunted him for a while, or like that he just hadn't processed. And that one is I felt like that was really powerful. There's another one with another brother where he's actually wearing his Heare hat and there's just two hands from out of the shot that are just holding onto his shoulders. And I felt like that was really cool, of just like, and it just embodied this idea that like, you really are never alone. Like there's always someone out there that's got your back. And as despite what we maybe think and try and rationalize, like there's always someone who like wants you here, supports you, and literally has a hand on your back if you are willing to accept it. So love it.
So good.
Some of the images that I was really excited to see, and they were awesome, were the cold plunges too. Like we did cold plunges both mornings, which was, we said it was sort of an optional thing, but I think pretty much everyone did it. If they didn't do it the first day,
it was fun.
Different group each time.
Yeah, I think everyone that did it the first day said to everyone else, you got to do it, and they did it the next day. Right?
Yes. And shout out to James Dawson, our homie, who led us through those.
That was so cool.
So
and
fun.
I loved seeing the shots from that, having done it, and then seeing the shots of some grimaces, in that freezing cold water. I was like, oh, it took me back there. I felt it. But then also some people were just really like in the Zen state of being in that water. Like Zach, I don't know how he did that, but he just got in there just calm and cool as a cucumber and was just breathing through it. And that was inspiring to me, and I was right next to him when it happened. And then seeing the shot after, I was like, wow, like you can see this kind of serene expression in this ice cold water. And I was just amazed by that. So I loved that moment because it was sort of this different activity, this different setting, this different action. And I just thought you captured it so well.
That's always how I feel I feel like I look like how Zach looked. But the truth,
and then you look at the pictures.
The truth is, well, during some editing, he said, I have a new favorite picture of you. And it's me just completely, I have my hat. It's like morning hair, and my hair's long right now, so it's like afro, and I'm like,
he's got like he's holding onto like this little tiny branch on the side of the river, and then he's got his hand over his chest, and he's just making this grimace, just like, and it's just a perfect shot of just like what it actually feels like, or as cool as we try and play it off and all that stuff. But yeah, it was cool. There was several of the brothers. It was their first time ever even trying it, and it was cold. Like
it was freezing.
I did it on the second day, and I actually ended up doing it by myself because just I wanted to capture the guys doing it, so I actually went in early so that I could do it and participate, but then still have time to like capture it, get breakfast, all that stuff, and just try to get ahead of the timeline. And I'm actually really glad I did it by myself because it was like this really good lesson for me of just accountability, right? Like I'm the only person that's going to keep me in this river. Wow. And so like I set a timer for 5 minutes and I just like breathe through it. Like there was no one cheering me on. There's no peer pressure. It was just like, I just had to deal with it. And
that's awesome.
It was pretty cool. But then it was also cool to see the opposite of like when there were, there was one point, one of the brothers was like, he was getting in but he wasn't like dropping down into the river. He was just like up to his knees, and everyone was kind of like in their own suffering, right? Like they were kind of distracted, but me being on the side and taking photos of it, I was just like, hey guys, he needs some help. And all of a sudden like he like rallied the troops and everyone was just like got his back, and he dropped down, got below the chest and just started dealing, suffering a little bit and dealing with the cold. And it was really cool to see him like just like conquer it, but with
that
with the brother's help.
encouragement.
Yeah. So
That's where peer pressure is a good thing.
yeah,
I do cold
positive.
plunges because of peer pressure.
yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
I feel like there was a lot of breakthroughs. I think everyone kind of had their own versions of that. Like they just needed to do it for themselves, or they got peer pressured into it, but also got the breakthroughs. And I think that's very that can be very reminiscent of like life, right? Like sometimes you just got to go through the gauntlet by yourself, and sometimes you just need to call on your brothers to say, "Hey, I'm doing this, and I need your help."
And I loved that tone that it set, starting both days with cold plunge optionally. But I mean, that's a theme throughout everything that we do and did at this retreat, which was facing something difficult that you know is going to be difficult, and then just literally submerging yourself into it, into the water, into whatever you have to face, and going full force into it and staying there for a few minutes. I mean, that's what we did with the Transformation Lab. It's what we did with breath work. It's really kind of an overarching theme. So I love that. I love bringing the cold plunges into the retreat. That was part of the new experience for me that I really loved.
Yeah. And then so this idea of descension, we descend into that, right? And then the ascension, and like how powerful it is to come up out of that, and the relief and the joy and the and you feel empowered. Like there's so many good things that come from going through that. So I love that metaphor that makes that powerful on more levels than just the with cold plunges. There's all kinds of the physiological and the mental benefits and all that stuff, but like metaphorically, it goes a lot deeper. And then we actually got to experience some of that, like getting into the realm of the soul. I think that's where the majority of the work happened. I mean, there were a lot of powerful moments throughout, but the majority, I think, of the big moments happened in this, what we called the Transformation Labs, followed by the breath work. And I love, though, that you touched on the meditation around the inner child and connecting with our sense of values and mission that came from that meditation. And it actually served as a way to kind of set us up for some of that deeper work too. We connect with that inner child, and we figure out what's most important and what kind of world do we want to create. And that is just an interesting prompt, because whatever comes out there kind of exposes to us maybe the world that we felt like we were lacking, or maybe it exposes a wound. So for example, I'll just share what mine was. My mission was to create a world of unconditional love. And then it's like, well, why did I pick that? Was there a time, or have there been times in my life where I have felt a lack of, or I have felt disconnected from unconditional love? And that's the reason I yearn for it, right?
Yeah.
And for me, that was a very powerful insight and discovery. And then we get to explore that a little bit. Let's just talk about the Transformation Labs real quick. We each got to take a turn kind of in the middle of the circle and confront the area where we either are feeling some disconnection, some pain. Maybe we are, we're confronting where we're living out of integrity with ourselves, or with the agreements that we've made in our lives. Or maybe those places where we feel there's some hurt, some wound, some challenging moments from our past that continue to kind of influence our lives today. And so we each got to take an opportunity to be in the middle of the circle, being led by a guide. And we had Russ helping us out. He did incredible work, and Nikki was supporting him. And then in the other circle, we had Doug, who did amazing work, and I was sort of trading off with him a little bit. Yeah, it was very intensive. It was very deep and very personalized, just one at a time, going through the work, and with the support of the circle of brothers there. And it was very bonding for those groups to witness and experience it themselves together. And we all went through the process together. Josh, that was new for you coming into this retreat. Like, we hadn't done that before. What was your take on it? What was it like to both, capture it and also to participate in it? Any thoughts on that?
I mean, just like the cold plunge, man, it's like the resistance, right? It's like, especially, there's some of the brothers who just like jumped right in, right? They were just like ready to go. And then you'd see what they went through, and it all of a sudden, it felt like it had just exposed all of your own vulnerabilities. And I started hearing myself and what other people were sharing. And I'm like, man, I've definitely got something going on in the background of this that I can't put my finger on quite. Like but I'm trying to think through it. You know, that was the biggest thing. I was trying to like figure it out. Like we always feel like, especially men, we just try and figure it out and like power through and all this stuff. And then eventually having, you know, I got photos, got all that stuff, and got some really powerful moments throughout. And there was a point too where I was just like, okay, yeah, like I just got to dive in. And for me personally, I was just like, I asked the question of like, well, where do I go from here? Kind of, it was somewhere in that realm. And basically all the brothers and with the most loving way are just like, you're next.
Your turn.
Your turn. It's time to find out. And yeah, it was really powerful. I mean, it was a really safe space, and you know, it was very vulnerable, but it was very powerful to like really dive into what is at the source of my own insecurities or inadequacies or resistance that I've been dealing with. You know, like I'll be honest, like this first year of business on my own has been rough. It is, it's, you know, every day waking up thinking like, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe this isn't the thing for me. Right. And
well, I feel that.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that being an entrepreneur, there's probably just some inherent element of that and imposter syndrome and all that kind of stuff. But it also left me wanting of like, is this really like, is this the universe or God or whatever telling me that this is not my thing? Or is this just me believing a lie about myself and interacting with it in a way that is affecting me day to day, where I haven't acknowledged it, I haven't discovered it. And it's, again, you know, the filter that's running the show at the moment. And, you know, Mike, you were the one that was guiding me when I was doing my transformation lab. And it was really powerful. Like I was definitely still trying to think through it and stuff. But then when I finally just like gave in and just like looked deep and did, you know, as you said several times, like the heart work, really looked at the heart, I just discovered like I've been interacting with this conversation that I'm weak. And that I can't do it. It's not going to make a difference. And no matter what I do, like I just, you know, I'm too weak to make the difference. And it just, man, it hit me like a hammer. It was just like, holy crap. And it was like for a week after that, even just thinking about the word weak, just like, you know, hit my gut and like just tear up. And it was just like so raw. And it was really interesting because it's a word that I've never really used. Like consciously, I've never like thought that I am weak. And, you know, I have things about being a disappointment in my life and all this stuff, and like some things that I've definitely discovered, but like that specific word was very subconscious and very hidden from my view. And once it like just came around front and was right there in front of me, like it deciphered all of this doubt that I've been dealing with. And it was super powerful. And I think that was what was really cool about the transformation lab is, you know, we did a lot of work to kind of bring it to that point. And then for pretty much most of the brothers, like it was like finally bringing that subconscious thing right into the forefront for you to recognize and approach and like actually grapple with, okay, do I want this running the show any longer, or am I going to choose something different? And that was my experience, at least. And it was cool to see it through so many other brothers and see them really, you know, again, not just like the cold plunge, like the resistance. There was so many that was like, you know, we're encouraging, hey, you're next. We're like, no, not yet. But then like hurdling through the resistance and then just like giving way to, you know, these things that just as human beings, we hold on to and we use as survival to protect us to survive, or at least what we think we're going to survive. And then when you finally bring it up, it's like, oh yeah, like that doesn't need to be running the show anymore. Yeah. Like, and it's so freeing. It's so amazing. And I think that's, you know, you see any of the reviews or anything like that's what people are speaking to. It's just like the final release of like the things that they've been holding on to that just have been under the surface and been filtering life. And yeah, it was definitely powerful. And to capture a lot of it, there was, you know, it was a lot of those moments that were maybe too sacred or too special to capture. But there were several where it just like, it really embodied what it is to be a brotherhood, to be humans together, supporting each other, connecting, contributing. And so it was an honor to be able to kind of be on both sides of that and discover for myself so that I could be in the trenches with the guys and then also have respect for what they were dealing with when, you know, I was on the outskirts and stuff like that. So.
Oh, so good. Thank you for sharing that. A thought came to me while you were sharing, which is even just the purpose of capturing some of these moments. It's I think it is for the individuals to then be able to relive that moment, to reflect on that like a journal does. And it's also to share the impact of that story. But I want to just make it really clear. It's really not about like, oh, now we can, plaster this everywhere and advertise it to the world. And I think that is such an important distinction to make, because I think one of my fears around like even just shooting stuff in at all is that it comes across as like, oh, we're just trying to like promote or sell something, right?
Right.
And I feel like there's such deeper purpose in doing that, and I have felt the benefits of it personally, that I'm like, I love that we have that medium to capture these moments that we want to relive, that we want to remember, that we want to share with others in the right ways, right? And so that just kind of hit me as you were explaining your process, and then the opportunities you had to capture it of some of the other brothers going through their work. That I just feel like there really is a humility about it, a reverence about it. I'd never have once felt like Josh was getting up in somebody's face in a vulnerable moment to be like, oh, I got to capture this moment, like there's such respect around it that I just feel like it honors the experience. It doesn't exploit it. It feels very respectful and authentic. And so again, that's one of the reasons I just feel really grateful that you're willing to go into those spaces and to capture those moments in a way that is very, I'll just say it again, respectful of what's happening. So thank you again for that.
Yeah, of course. I think too, like to speak to that, one thing that I've realized as well, and at least from my perspective as a creator, is like, I want these stories and these breakthroughs to resonate with someone.
Yeah.
Because it's like what you've said a bunch of times with breath work, or even with our Heare huddles that we do with our Zoom meetings, and it's that which is most personal is most universal.
Yeah.
And like, it's so true. It's like we think that we're alone in these things and that we're dealing with. And, if I can just have someone tell a story of what they went through and have, I don't know, 5-10 people be like, that's me.
Yeah.
I've personally in my life, I've probably had more breakthroughs through hearing myself in someone else's share than I have just discovering it for myself. I mean, maybe it's 6s, but like there's so many times where I've heard someone be vulnerable, share what they're dealing with, share what they've been struggling with, and then been like, I'm not dealing with that exact same thing, but I am that person with this other circumstance in my life. And when you see that, and then you also see them break through it, it's like, it gives you so much hope that like, this doesn't have to be my reality forever.
Yeah.
And like, I can actually have choice in the matter of how this dictates my life or not. And I think that's what I think you're speaking to is like having this content and these retreats speak to other brothers out there that they can hear themselves in another brother sharing and have a breakthrough for themselves, even on a smaller scale, or maybe, maybe it'll transform everything for them.
Yeah.
And if you have one person that resonates with one story, like it's worth it. So
that happened with, in our circle. We actually didn't have time for me to go because, it kind of went longer than we anticipated, which I was so glad. There was somebody in my group, a brother who is somebody I look up to a lot. And hearing part of what he shared and some of his growing up, and I didn't realize how similar we were in some of our upbringing, because we're very different people now, but watching him go through what he experienced and the learning that took place, I was able to see myself in his whole thing. And that was actually, it was pretty healing for me to see that, because it almost felt like he was doing it proxy. I mean, for himself, but also I was inserting myself into that. And it's something that I never would have thought of, that we were so similar in that way until that experience. And so going to the point that we always talk about, which is that which is most personal is most universal. I mean, it's so true. It's just, it gives other people permission, and it gives us those opportunities to bind each other together to say, okay, you're going through this too. And we had a very similar upbringing, and we can bond over that. We can talk over that now and speak to that, and how we're coming out of certain things that we experienced as children, teenagers, or adults, that now we can go through it together and continue to go through it because of that experience. And so I love everything that you shared. there.
Yeah, it's like the courage of vulnerability is such a snowball effect. It takes courage to be the first one to share, really go there, but it compounds so quickly as far as giving, like you said, giving people permission. And I think that's a really powerful thing.
Dude, I felt like witnessing people's transformations was experiencing my own in a lot of ways. And even the very first one that we did one kind of to model what we were going to do with the entire group before we split into smaller groups. And I think I probably saw, I don't know, at least half of the group were really feeling it as they were watching the first person go through their experience. I was feeling it. I was getting emotional. I saw it in many others, and it's because we could all relate and see ourselves in that dynamic that was being played out, and we could see ourselves in that brother, and there's sort of this love and compassion for the person who's going through it, and then you're also mapping that to like your own context and your own life experience, and it's a beautiful thing. And so even though it took a lot of time to go one at a time, everybody, I think, was benefiting from supporting and witnessing and relating with the person, whoever's turn it was, right? That was kind of a crazy thing with the programming of the whole retreat, is like we had planned a certain amount of time for these transformation labs, and we easily doubled the amount of time that we had initially allocated, at least. Yeah.
And we set a timer at first for 10 minutes, and then when it went off, we're like, no, we're not.
Yeah, you can't just cut that off right in the moment.
To get to the good stuff, yeah.
So as far as the retreat programming went, like, and me being sort of, facilitating and feeling like I'm kind of steering the ship of, okay, yeah, now it's time to do this, now it's time to do that. That was actually an important thing for me to let go of that sense of like, it's not going the way that I thought it would, but seeing how important it was and allowing space to just continue to do that work. It was a good, really tangible experience for me to let go of like the want to control, And so it was weird. I had like some breakthrough moments in the context of facilitating the retreat where there was somebody there that I felt like was much more knowledgeable and experienced than me, that made me feel like, less than, and this is my own inner stuff, right? There's nothing said that was critical or whatever, but I just felt suddenly like, ooh, inadequacy. There you are. Like it was exposed in the actual retreat experience. And then that was another example of, wow, I'm really wanting to control this, and I'm wanting it to take this amount of time, and it's just taking longer. And can I just let go of that and roll with it? And it turned out beautifully, and it's like, wow, look what happens when you just let go of some of this stuff.
Yeah.
What ended up happening, we did those transformation labs, and it went into, we transitioned from there into breath work, which is always a real, pinnacle kind of highlight experience. I wasn't sure what to expect this time around because we were all beat. Like we were exhausted at this point. I mean, just the emotional intensity. Physically, we were out standing in the sunlight or in the shade for hours, right? So I just thought, let's just come in here. And we had this kind of cool, like almost like barn-like space, just this big open building that we got to do breath work in. And I thought, let's just come in here and rest. And I'll set up breath work for those who want to actually do the practice of pulling breath. It's a little more demanding than just laying there, right? You're actively breathing. So I thought half the group here will just lay here and rest, and that's great. And a couple people did. I mean, I heard some people snoring, yeah. Like people did take advantage of the opportunity to have a rest, but a lot of people dove into the breathwork practice. It was like a marathon at this point, right? Of like intensity. And man, there were some powerful experiences during that breath work. And I loved, you got some shots. They kind of blew me away, honestly, looking at them afterwards, of the interactions between those of us that were facilitating and those who were, pulling the breath, and then just people in their own space. And there's some that were just really tranquil and really peaceful. And then there were some that were like really battling some things or feeling some things pretty deeply. And you could just see it. And it was a really, again, a kind of a sacred thing to experience. And I loved the contrast of doing the transformation labs where it's very external, right? Like you could see each other. There was the group supporting each other. There was verbalizing things. And then we went into the breath work and it was very internal. It was very private and very individual. And I think, different spaces like that resonate for different people based on their personalities or where they're at in their journey or whatever. And so it was just such a cool thing to get to experience those back to back.
I'll add there that this one was particularly special for me because it was the first time I'd ever helped facilitate.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I wasn't necessarily doing much other than walking around and making sure everybody was doing okay. And the way that you have prepped it up for me, I mean, this is probably my 8th time doing breath work with you. I felt ready to start being on the other side and seeing what was going on behind the scenes. Because usually you're just laying on the floor. I'm laying on the floor with my mask on and experiencing it, and I always have a good experience. But this time, because of the way that you've modeled it, and you bring a lot of spirituality into it, and I was praying a lot of the time because of how you set it up, enabled for me to have a really powerful experience where I felt this complete compassion, having this bird's eye view of watching all of these men who are, whatever they're going through. And I had the opportunity to go and facilitate and, in a way, minister, I like to call it, of like being able to go and help a lot of these guys just
through touch,
just through a lot of them. And I was praying, like I said, and so I was trying to be really in tune to like, what does this man need? What does each man need? And there were some where I went and I grabbed their hand because you'd done that for me before, and that was a really powerful experience because there's something about it where you need something to hold on to, or you just need to know that you're going through it with somebody.
Yeah.
And so that's been powerful for me. And there were a few where I did that. And some of them, after a few seconds, I would just squeeze their hand and then walk away. Others, they like pulled me in.
Pull you in. Yeah.
and there were a few moments where, I was there and on my knees, that's where I thought I'm going to say a prayer. And I had the opportunity to kind of pray over them in a way. And while I was holding their hands, helping them through whatever they were experiencing. And so,
but
anyway,
not out loud, just in
not
your
out
head.
loud, yes, just in my head, just really praying to know how to help them and that they are able to arrive at where they need to go. That was a whole different experience for me to see it from that angle and to feel so much compassion for each one of these brothers, so much love for each one of these brothers that are doing the work. And this description, the pictures will never do it justice for what actually happened, right? But it is nice to have those pictures and to have those memories to say, like, this is real. Like, some people are skeptical of this stuff, and it's like, it's real and it's powerful to be able to go to those places with the guidance that you lead us through.
Well, and that we experience together.
Yes.
I mean, so much of it is about the connections that have been made and the opening of our hearts and our minds, and then going into a practice like that. And I remember both times, Josh, that you've captured breath work at retreats. I feel like both times, correct me if I'm wrong, I look over at you and you've got your camera kind of down and you've got tears in your eyes. For sure in Zion. I don't remember if it was the same in Arizona. I think it was.
It was.
Yeah, I looked over in Arizona and you were sitting there next to Mitch and you were both just like...
Just having
tears.
Yeah, it's powerful. I mean, shout out to Mike and his breathwork, man. I've never experienced anything like that. It is very underrated. It's so hard for us to describe.
Yeah.
It probably sounds weird to have John talking about being on his knees next to a guy who's pulling breath and just breathing for 30 minutes, right? Like, you can't really get the grasp of what's going on there. But for me, I'm so glad that I've done breathwork several times, not capturing it, to like know what that experience is like and know what it's just a sense of what these men are going through, because it amplifies so much of like when not to or when to capture it and stuff and bring context to what's happening. And like for me personally, I usually do a lot of problem solving during breath work. I start with all these creative things that I'm just stuck on, and then I usually end up getting out of myself, and then I usually end up leaving with just this pure gratitude for whether it's the people around me, the brothers around me, like my wife, like stuff like that. Like I usually end up going out to externally to people that have made an impact on me, and even had some pretty spiritual experiences too, where there's just like things that it'd be too long to share here, but it was just like really palpable stuff. I think we're just speaking to these things that I had in the background that I wanted answers to almost. And so it's very different for every individual. But that's what I love about you talking about the contrast of that, because the transformation lab was very external. It was very on display, right? But it was all in the support. And then the contrast of doing this breath work and going internal and going through stuff that only And what was cool too, I actually really appreciated, is that I actually asked a bunch of brothers afterwards if they wanted to share about their experience on camera. And a lot of them were like, I actually don't. Like, I'm going to have this for myself. Like, and because it was so personal to them and what they go through. But being on the outskirts of that too is just like, there is an energy. I mean, not only like knowing the cadence of the music, like I feel like that is a very big factor. Like the playlist that you have is just incredible, especially if you've done breathwork a couple times, and then just to even be in the room where that's happening, you kind of know exactly where the people are at in the journey of breathwork based on the song, because the rhythm and the pace of it definitely has an impact on kind of the trenches you go through, the journey you go through. Like, it's not always bad. It could be really rough stuff. It could be very overwhelmingly like joyous stuff, but you just kind of know where they're at, and you can see it happening too. You don't know the context of what they're really going through, but you can just see like, and like that's what usually, at least at Zion and at the Arizona retreat, what really hits me both times was just, there's just this profound awareness of the suffering that's out there in the world and the suffering that we're all going through internally or externally. And, but also in contrast, the healing that's happening too, because like that's part of the breath work, is you really confront some of the things that are hidden or that you may be suffering around. Again, it's not always that, but it's sometimes, like a lot of times it can be those things. And then on the other side of that is just so much relief and healing, and just like, it's so palpable in the room, or, in Zion, it was outside, but like, it was just in the space, it was, and it just hits me because like I've gone through it, I just have I end up having so much empathy for those moments that at Arizona, I probably spent 5 minutes sitting against the wall, just like put the camera down and just was being there with it. And like, I was crying and just like, cause I'm just very aware of what's going on in the world and how it doesn't have to be that way. And like, we can actually heal from this stuff, and like seeing people do it. And then Mitch came over and gave me a hug, and it was like, it was really cool moments. But it definitely is some of the more powerful stuff that I've ever like been around. And it's very distinct and also very hard to describe in a way that hopefully has people be more interested than wary, I guess, because it's very worth giving it a shot. So
it is. Thank you. The holy ground concept and symbol always comes to mind with these conversations and in those spaces. So thank you for sharing that.
Going back to what we've talked about multiple times, like the resistance, I think that's like the biggest learning thing for me with these retreats, is like, there's always there's always resistance. There's always this like nagging, like, probably should, but I don't want to, and like getting over the wants and the feels and all that stuff, and just going, like, diving into something that, if you feel called that this will make a difference for you, like, get to a retreat, because there definitely is something available in getting uncomfortable, doing something that, you don't want to do. There were several brothers that very vocally were like, I didn't really want to do this, but I just kind of dove in anyways because I felt like I needed to. And, they were transformed human beings on the other side of it, which was so cool. And, there's a whole wide range of breakthroughs, but I think we could probably ask any one of them, and, that'll be one of the more defining events or experiences of their life. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, if I can, I just wanted to touch on that a little. There's a brother that came, and the very first night, he said something similar to that, of like, I had this perception of what the Heare Brotherhood was, and I thought, no, my life is fine. Like, that's for people that are really struggling, or for X, Y, and Z. And he had one of the most powerful experiences I've ever seen. And he talks about that throughout as well, just the power of transformation, the power of joining together as brothers and joining together as even as strangers that become brothers, that what that allows, the transformation that allows as we dive in to the work together. So I appreciated his honesty at the beginning, saying, I was here because I was invited, but I just felt like I should come. And it ended up being a very high caliber group of people, like it always is. Like all of us, there's always something that's in the way from us growing, or from us getting to the next level of where we want to be, or chiseling away, as we talk about with the David statue, of chiseling away to our true self. At the end of the day, it really is true that we need to have these types of experiences and these types of moments where we just dive in, and we might not want to, but we know we have to.
I think something right there is, like you said, moments, right? Like, I think that was another takeaway I had that maybe isn't talked about, is I think there's times too where it's like, we don't need to dive. We don't need to be doing all this introspection. Me and Mike talked about this a little bit of like, are there points where you just stop looking for everything that is insecure or wrong or whatever internally, and actually just like go live, like even for those, like the guys that are like lone wolves and it doesn't resonate with them, like, if that's really what resonates with you right now, sounds good.
Right.
Like, do your thing, and just know that you don't have to live, like, it doesn't have to be that way if it stops resonating with you. And like, like there's people that got your back. And like, I think that's something that I'm coming to realize is just like, sometimes you do have to dial it back. And like, even if David's not complete, right. The sculpture of David's not complete, to just like be in awe and be happy with the progress you've made so far, and that it's maybe looks somewhat like a human, even though it's not all chiseled out, right? And be like appreciative of that. And then when you're ready, like start chiseling again. And I think that was a cool takeaway too for myself, because I was one of those people, I didn't go in thinking this is what I'm going to break through on this,
right,
at this retreat. I was, like I said, very business, like I'm just going to really focus on the video side of things. But as I started looking and stuff, there were things that were available for me to break through, and I'm so grateful for that. And I'm also like, okay, just being like sitting in that for a little while and being like, you know what, like life is good, and I don't need to try and fix everything right now. I can just be. So I think there's time and space for all of it. And it's cool to know that we have this resource and that you guys have created and provided. So, having that as something that's out there is pretty powerful. And so thank you.
Yeah, love that. And you just reminded me of something. The half finished sculptures are some of my favorite sculptures out there, where you've got like this beautifully crafted torso coming up out of like this jaggedy, rubbly granite or marble or whatever it is, right? And you just connected the dots for me. Like, the work in progress is beautiful. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's still
inspiring.
Art.
It's still art. Yeah. So I love that you said that, and the way that connected in my brain from admiring pieces like that, from years ago. So thank you for that. You make a good point about, it's not always about like, oh, I have to confront and like, go through the trenches or, face my demons every moment all the time. There have been times for me where I've gone into a practice, whether it's a mindfulness thing or a breath work or whatever, where it's just sitting in gratitude and how powerful that is, and it's not always about like vanquishing the inner foe. It's just like, can I just sit in this space and appreciate life and be grateful and just delight in that and feel the joy of it? And it's very powerful. And so I see like a lot of these tools can be used just simply for amplifying all the good, not necessarily just digging into the hard stuff. And it's just as beneficial, it's just as powerful for me. So yeah, just wanted to add that.
So good.
So, yeah.
So amen. Good. Well, thank you, Josh, for coming on, for being a part of the team, for constantly just being there, capturing these moments, getting the history of the Heare Brotherhood and the history of a lot of these people's lives and our lives. And we're just so grateful for you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thank you for the opportunity. It's definitely been an honor so far to get to know you guys, work with you a little bit, and, be able to capture this great movement that is, like I said, it's needed in the world. And it's awesome that you guys are putting yourselves through the gauntlet, through the eye of the storm, eye of the needle, however you want to say it, to
eye of the tiger.
To make it available to all of us to, use when we need it and contribute when we can and all of that. So
cool.
Thank you.
Right on.
Love it. Thanks. Love you, brother.
Love you.
Thank you for listening. To join the Brotherhood, find the Heare Brotherhood app on the Apple Store or Google Play. To learn more, check out our website and find us on social platforms, Heare Brotherhood, Heare. Thank you again.